Is he still in class? Is Sherman still there? Oh, Sherman.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the West Virginia Archives and History Library. We have a few events coming up in the coming weeks. October 7th, 35 years studying and being part of the history of the Greenbrier with Dr. Robert Conte. On November 6th, West Virginia Voices of War, oral histories from West Virginia war veterans with Eric Douglas. November 13th, Rosie the Riveters with Ann Montague. These are some upcoming events here, just like this in the West Virginia Archives and History Library. And we'd like to invite you to those. Those usually start around 6 o'clock, and they last till about 7:30 or so. I'd like to go ahead and turn the evening over to Anthony Kinzer. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm happy to see you here tonight. And I'm even more grateful to Mr. James Estes, as you know, his press, to be with us this evening and give us his rendition of the block and his memories growing up in the area of Charleston and the people he was acquainted with as he was growing up and going to school at Garnet. This is our fourth and last lecture for the year. We'll begin again next year, May 21st, here at 6 o'clock. And at this point, our first speaker next year will be Lewis Smoot Sr. So I hope to see you then, and I'm happy to see all of you here tonight, and I'm looking forward to others coming tonight. But as I said, the organization, West Virginia Center for African American Art and Culture, are very instrumental in bringing back and highlighting the history that you have created within the block and Charleston area. And we hope to continue this series next year. If you go down on Shrewsbury Street, you'll see our two historic signs on Shrewsbury at the Best Western Hotel and in the property of Simpson United Methodist Church. Our historic signs are placed and located there, gives a brief history of the area. And we had placed historic memorabilia bricks in the sidewalk of Washington Street. One depicting the Ferguson Hotel at the site where the Ferguson was. Another across the street depicting the First Baptist Church where First Baptist Church was, facing Shrewsbury Street. And a third one on the corner of Shrewsbury and Washington Street, which depicts the Brown Building in the area it was approximately where the Brown Building was. Those are memorabilia bricks, and they established very historic structures that were there, and that I'm sure that each one of you remember going there and having some memories there that you can relate to each other at some given point in time. Go down there and take a look at those bricks and let your memories wander and think about things that happened as you were growing up in the Shrewsbury Street area. Again, I thank you for coming, and with no further ado, I'll pass it on to Estes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is James P. Estes Sr. I was born at 1517 First Avenue on Charleston's west side. Our home was a very modest dwelling with a living room, dining room, bedroom, kitchen, and bath. There were my parents and an older sister. My sister and I slept on the cot in the dining room, and once the family began to increase in size, Dad added 2 rooms to the back of the house, creating 3 bedrooms. Ultimately, I had 3 siblings, 2 sisters, and a brother. And my dad was a barber, and he had a barber shop located on the post office walk which was the walkway that went from Capitol Street to Summer Street, next to the main post office. Quarrier Street at that time ended at Capitol Street. Now, my dad, his hours were from 8 to 6 on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. 8 to 12 on Wednesdays and 8 to 8 on Saturdays. My mother did day work, and by the way, all of my father's clients were white. My mother did day work, and she was always at home in time to prepare supper so that we could all sit down and eat. One of the things that we were taught at the dinner table was that all adults were given respect, including being addressed as Mr. or Mrs. My mother did day work, but she was, as I said, she was always home in time to complete the meal. Now, once we started to school, my daddy said, now whatever you do, don't bring me an F in here, or there will be consequences. Now, my daddy learned the value of discipline while serving in the military in France in World War I. He was a strict disciplinarian, and he enforced it with the razor strap. Now, I am so glad that today's laws were not in existence at that time, because I'm not certain when my parents may have been let out of incarceration. My daddy had no hesitation in addressing me with the razor strap, and my mother with a switch from a pussy willow tree on my sister. We went to great lengths to be able to be conscientious students and children. In 1938, while they were in the process of building the Canal Boulevard, I used to stand in the backyard and watch the equipment going back and forth, and I wanted so badly to be able to go over there to get a closer look. But I remembered what had happened when my mother would wake us up early during the summertime so that we could get our chores done before she was ready to leave for work. Now, one week my sister had to wash dishes and clean the kitchen. I had to make the bed, sweep the floors, and dust the furniture. I also had to cut the grass and trim the hedges. Now, the last thing that my mother would say before she left for work was, I don't want you to go out of this yard, and I don't want you to have any company. Once I left the yard, Miss Johnson down the street saw me, and she called me over and asked me, what are you doing out of the yard? The answer I gave her was unsatisfactory. So she spanked me. And when Mother returned, she told Mother what had happened, and I got another spanking. Now, in 1938, while they were building the Canal Boulevard, as I said, I wanted to be able to go over there and get a closer look to see what it was that they were doing. Now, on First Avenue, we had a few elderly folk that didn't have the means or the finances to be able to sufficiently support themselves without help of some sort. Now, the federal government had a subsidy program that would provide food for people that were qualified. I had a wagon, so I would go, we would walk up the boulevard to the distribution center located close to the courthouse, and we would get a wagon full of groceries for these folks. Now, these groceries were called condiments. And condiments is not the right word. Commodities. Right. And Mr. Pack, who lived down the street and worked at Kelly's Axe and Hoe Factory, had a horse and a plow. And every vacant lot in the neighborhood, he had a garden. And he would share the food free of charge with anyone that asked for it. Now, Clayton Morris and I were on Capitol Street, and a fellow approached us and asked, "Can you tell me where the post office is?" Clayton said, "Sure, go down Lee Street, turn right on the next corner." He said, "Thank you very much." He gave each of us one of his business cards. And he said, "I am a new minister here in Charleston, and I would like to see you in my church this Sunday morning, and I will show you how to get into heaven." Clayton looked at him and said, "Oh, shucks, you don't even know where the post office is." So, in 1941, on December the 7th, which was on a Sunday, we were playing football in the street on First Avenue when a kid comes down the street and he was yelling, "Extra, extra, read all about it. Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor." We all looked at one another and said, "What is Pearl Harbor?" I went home and my mother and dad were listening to the accounts of the bombing on the radio. I was in the 7th grade at that time, and on Monday, our principal, Mr. Bates, had all of the students to assemble in the gymnasium after lunch to hear President Roosevelt declare war on the Japanese. Now, after he had declared the war, there was a barber that worked in my dad's barber shop by the name of Mr. Perkins, whose son was an aircraft mechanic, and he trained with the first flyers that were trained as fighter pilots with the 99th Pursuit Squad. That was the predecessor to the Tuskegee Airmen. Now, the 99th Pursuit Squadron was the first fighting squadron to be deployed overseas. Mr. Perkins would tell me of letters that he had received from his son, and he was describing some of the activities where he was stationed in North Africa and later in Italy. And I first should say in early 1942, the fellow that my dad had working in the barber shop shining shoes was drafted in the Army. Dad asked me, "Do you want to come up to the barber shop and shine shoes?" And I said, "Absolutely yes." He said, "Well, I want you to understand that you will be here not later than 3 o'clock every day. And Dad purchased all of my supplies to be able to do the job. And in return, I had to clean the barber shop. And when I was able to start cleaning early on Tuesdays or Thursdays, I could catch the bus to get to West Virginia State College in time to swim. Now, Charleston had its swimming pools, and there was Rock Lake Pool in South Charleston, but we weren't allowed in them. We would go to Kanawha City at Donley Hollow, where there were 2 artificial lakes where we would go to swim. One Sunday, when we were about to go to Kanawha City, my very best friend, Phil Boston, didn't have the bus fare to go to Kanawha City, so being as how I was working, I paid his fare to Kanawha City, and Philip drowned. I could not get over the fact that I felt the responsibility for Philip losing his life. In about a couple of weeks, my dad decided to take the entire family to his home in Martinsville, Virginia for a week. Hopefully, this would help me to be able to cope with this tragedy. Now, when we were in the 11th grade, our geometry teacher brought a fellow by the name of Earl Harvey to our classroom. And there was an article that appeared in the Charleston Gazette daily called, "Believe It or Not," in Ripley's Believe It or Not. Earl Harvey was featured in the article, Believe It or Not. And Robert Ripley went to great lengths to prove or to make sure that everyone or anything that appeared in his articles were absolutely true. So Earl was known through the article as the human adding machine. It was said that he could answer questions in math, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and give the answers in fractions. Now, our teacher, Mr. White, had Charles James, who I felt was an absolute genius. He never, ever did I see him study. But Mr. White sent him to the blackboard to solve a problem. And as Charles was writing the problem on the board, Earl was writing the answer to the problem. And Charles had solved the problem. The answer that Earl had written was the correct answer. Now, in our senior year, Charles James took the exam for the Pepsi-Cola Scholarship Award, and he was awarded 4 years at Howard University. Now, the winners could attend any accredited school, college, or university that he so desired, with the full tuition and any required fees paid in full for the 4 years, as long as they maintained a passing grade. They made at least 2 awards to each of the 48 states and the District of Columbia, and 1 award to Alaska received in 1947, there were 126 awards that were given throughout the United States and its territories. 23 additional awards were given to Negroes in states that had laws mandating separate school systems for whites and for Negroes. Now, West Virginia has a separate school system. And if there was not a Negro high school within a prescribed number of miles of your home, you could go to any place in the state to attend high school, and they would pay your room and board plus a stipend for expenses. Now, with the Pepsi-Cola Scholarships Awards, in addition to having the full tuitions paid, they also received $25 a month, plus a travel expense at the rate of 3 cents per mile for one round trip from home to your college. Now, when I graduated from high school, I worked in the parts department at Capital Motor Sales located on East Broad Street. And I worked as a custodian at Charleston National Bank and as a truck driver. In 1950, I decided to return to school. So I enrolled at West Virginia State College Vocational, and I studied the art of bricklaying. When graduating, I went to work as an apprentice bricklayer for the Sherman R. Smoot Company. Later that year, I was drafted, and I had to go to the military. And I served my basic training at Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. And after completing basic training, I was sent to leadership school. And when I graduated from leadership school, I was promoted to a PFC. And then I was shipped overseas, where I was the first black to go into my company since the military was just beginning to integrate their branches of service. The company that I went into was the 15th Constabulary Squadron located in Leiden, Germany. They were conducting border patrol along the East German and Czechoslovakian border. After about 2 months, I was told to report to the orderly room, and they told me they wanted me to pack my duffel bag because I was leaving the next morning to go to the 7th Army NCO Academy, located in Munich, Germany. Graduating, I attained the distinction of being selected as honor graduate number 3, class number 31, 7th Army NCO Academy. And I attained the goal of superior in leadership ability and instructing abilities. I also qualified as a basic map reading instructor. When I returned to the 15th Constabulary Squadron, I was promoted to a corporal, which is a rank that I retained until I was separated from the military in 1953. I had to serve an additional 6 years in the inactive reserve, at which time I received a discharge from the military. Now, in 1955, I had learned to bowl while I was overseas, but when I returned to Charleston, there was no place for us to bowl. So there were a small group of the black employees at the E.I. DuPont Company, located in Bell, West Virginia, who approached the HR officer and requested, since DuPont was sponsoring several of their bowling teams, they requested that they might be able to join one of these teams. The officers checked with all of the bowling alleys in the local area, and all of them refused to accept any blacks, except one, Strikes and Spares, located on Washington Street West. The owner, Harry Blackwell, asked, "What color is their money?" Even though the leagues would not accept blacks, whenever there was no league play in the bowling alley, it was filled with black patrons. In 1958, the American Business Company had scheduled a basketball game, an NBA basketball game, between the Minneapolis Lakers and the Cincinnati Reds. Now, the Minneapolis Lakers had a very highly touted rookie by the name of Elgin Baylor. Baylor and two other black players were housed at the Brown Hotel. White players were housed at the Daniel Boone Hotel with all of its amenities. Now, it was said that the white players spent a night at the Brown Hotel trying to urge Baylor to play in the game. Baylor steadfastly refused. And to show his protest to the hotel discrimination, he sat on the bench in civilian clothes during the game. The ABC filed a protest with the National Basketball Association. And when Minneapolis returned home, it was announced that Baylor would not receive any penalties for not playing in the game. Now, after I had returned to the Sherman R. Smoot Company, we had projects in West Virginia, Ohio, Michigan, Washington, D.C., and Maryland. While working on a project in Cleveland, Ohio, I met a young lady in 1960 who became my wife in 1962. After moving to Columbus, Ohio, I enrolled in the continuing education studies at the Ohio State University and at the Ohio Dominican University. I became a foreman, a superintendent, and in 1976 I was named the vice president of Sherman R. Smoot Company. Now, the Sherman R. Smoot Company transitioned from strictly a masonry contractor to a general contractor and construction manager. Now, I remained with the Smoot Company until 1986. My brother and I founded John James Estes and Associates in 1986, and the company was named after our father. We were general contractors, and our portfolio included commercial and a number of projects at the atomic plant located in Piketon, Ohio. I served as superintendent on projects in Columbus, Ohio, and vice president of the corporation. I retired in 1993 after 42 years in construction. I served on the board of directors of the following organizations: Southwest Recreation Corporation had the responsibility of reopening a recreational facility that had lost its grant funding after only 2 years in operation. The facility had an Olympic-sized swimming pool, which, when they reopened the facility, they contracted the swimming pool out to the various high schools in the area. The Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, they planned for the federal funding on streets, bridges, utilities, and other local projects that were based on the increase or the decrease in the population. The Alvis House, they provided halfway housing for men and women that were being released from the prison. They also had classes, and they tried everything they could to be able to get jobs for these people, so in order to reduce the recidivism rate of these returnees. Lifecare Alliance was the most worthwhile organization that I had ever had the pleasure of serving. It was started in 1898 as the Instructive District Nurses Association to combat the poor health and the high infant mortality rate of the day. Lifecare serves Franklin, Madison, and Marion counties. And there are 10 programs with Lifecare Alliance. They are Meals on Wheels, the Columbus Cancer Clinic, Project Open Home, Open Hand, Senior Dining Centers, Help at Home, Groceries on the Go, Impact Safety, Health, Senior Health Services, the Senior Farmers Markets, Visiting Nurses, and the Adult Animal Care. Now, Lifecare, the program Meals on Wheels was the second program started in the United States in 1973. And they currently are serving 5,000 meals a day. The goal of Lifecare was to help the elderly residents and the medically challenged to be able to remain independent in the safety of their own home and their community. Now, I have had the pleasure of serving on the board of Lifecare Alliance since 1984. I served as the president in 1990 and 91. Now, for every elderly resident or medically challenged that Lifecare is able to help stay in their own home, they save the taxpayers of Ohio $62,000 a year. Now, I attended a Mason Contractors Convention in Cleveland, Ohio in 1964. The keynote speaker, on the back of his business cards was a poem that I found to be an endearment to me. It was entitled "The Man in the Glass." I had this card on my nightstand under the glass, and I used to read it frequently. And it read, "When you get what you want in your struggle for self, and the world makes you king for a day, just walk to the mirror and take a look at yourself and see what the man in the glass has to say. It's not your wife, your mother or sweetheart, whose judgment you must pass. The fellow whose opinion counts most in your life is that man there in the glass. He's the fellow to please. Forget all the rest, for he's with you right through to the end, and you will have your most dangerous, most difficult trouble if the man in the glass is your friend. Sure, you can fool the world as you pass along through the years. You may even get pats on your back as you pass, but your only reward will be heartache and tears if you fool that man in the glass. Thank you.
Princess, you step up for a second.
You got away from me. Whereas James Preston Estes Sr. is a native of Charleston, West Virginia, and graduated in the spring of 1947 from Garnet High School. And whereas James Preston Estes Sr. proudly served his country in the United States Army and through the years has developed unquestionable talents such as perseverance, loyalty, and self-determination that are on display every day. And whereas James Preston Estes Sr. shares his time and expertise in support of the Block Speaker Series in reflection for the benefit of younger generation, future entrepreneurs and mountaineers, and also gives credence to those life experiences and people that molded him into the person he is today. And whereas James Preston Estes Sr. has shown a true dedication and commitment to his career that has set an outstanding example for us all. Therefore, I, Earl Ray Tomlin, Governor of West Virginia, do hereby proclaim James Preston Estes Sr. to be a distinguished mountaineer.
This is a wonderful occasion, and I thank each and every one of you for being here. I want you to know that your history is important, not only to me, but to everybody in this country. To Charleston, to the up-and-coming generation of people who will look on YouTube or on the internet and read and great history, not only tonight, but for years to come. I want, at this time, Ms. Lacey, would you step here, please? And one of my important board members of the organization, Ms. Chlorine Carter, who, by the way, is the president pro tem of the Silver Haired Legislature. Would you come up tonight and present Ms. Lacey with her certificate of appreciation?
The state of West Virginia and Earl Ray Tomlin, the governor. Here, whereas Barbara Hicks Lacey, a native of Charleston, West Virginia, and a graduate in the spring class of 1951 from Garnet High School, and whereas Barbara Lacey began in her family's restaurant through the years of development, unquestionably talents such as preservation, loyalty, self-determination that are on display every day. Whereas Barbara Hicks Lacey shares her time and experiences in the support of Black Speaker Series and reflections for the benefit of younger generations, future entrepreneurs and mountaineers, and also gives credence to those life experiences and people that have molded her throughout the person to make her what she is today. Therefore, Barbara Lacey has shown a true dedication and complemented to her career that have set an outstanding example for all of us. Therefore, I, Ray Tomlin, Governor of West Virginia, do hereby proclaim Barbara Hicks Lacey to be a distinguished mountaineer, given under my hand and the grant seal of the state of West Virginia on the 25th day of September in the year of our Lord, 2014. Earl Ray Tomlin, Governor.
And they live in the same town of Urbancrest, West Virginia. But Press, if you all have any questions for Press, or Tech is ready for a little bit, you can go right ahead and ask a couple of questions. I'm sure that he'll be able to answer any more that you have. So, question number one, right there.
Where could we get a copy of that poem you just read?
Oh, sir,
The Man in the Glass.
yes.
Where can we get a copy of that?
I'll get some copies to Mr. Kinzer.
Because I work at Job Corps, and I think that's something that these young people should know.
Not a problem. I'll see to it that they get it.
Go right ahead, ask your question, go right ahead. Yes.
Oh, Press, or you talking about Elton Builder? It was a young man from Reynolds Street, I was witness there. He got on his knees and begged Elton Builder to play, and his name was Hot Rod Holiday. Tonight, and Joe Simpson. And Shorty Harmon was a sport writer, and he told the mayor of the city of Charleston wanted the Lakers to sue them, kick him off, and they refused. And Shorty Harmon said, y'all gonna miss a lot of great black athletes if we don't turn them to let them stay in the hotel. And he's the one that broke the record for the blacks to stay in the hotel. It's Elton Bailey. The young man was Washington, D.C.
Actually, it was thought that that would be the impetus to open all of the public accommodations to all people in Charleston. But it was a year after the passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1965 before that ever came to fruition in Charleston.
Press, what happened to Earl Harvey, along with C.H. James, when C.H. James got that scholarship and went on off to Howard? Where was Earl at that time with all that knowledge that Earl had?
He was still downtown with all of the newspapers under his arm,
Okay.
darting around in and out of, and directing traffic.
All right.
And he died in 1986, I believe.
Chris, in reference to, this is just an additive to Earl. I work for welfare, and Earl used to come and visit me every day at night. And some of the guys in the office had a problem with maybe 15 numbers by another 15 numbers. And they worked on it for about 2 months, okay, till they all got it together. So Earl came in, as he always did, and he sang the answer, you know, 7632987432516, and it was absolutely correct.
You got it down pat. He got recognized when he estimated the correct amount of brick was put in the Corona running pipe. Yeah, Dr. Lee.
Did you know the John Norman family on 2nd Street?
Did I know them?
Did you know them? Either John
Yes.
Sr. or John and his
Yes, as a matter of fact,
Norman?
John, or Jack, as we
Jack.
called him, who just passed recently, called me last year, just before our high school reunion. And he had made contributions to both the high school reunion committee and the foundation. He had given a grant to each of them to purchase a computer, I think, so that they could maintain a current data system. And he asked me if I would have a document printed for him on the school colors. So I had the document printed on old gold paper with blue type, which was Garnet's colors, old gold and blue. But I was truly sorry to learn of his passing.
Seeing as there are no more questions, I'd like to say that the West Virginia Center for African American Art and Culture, with our office in the People's Building, is a qualified by IRS nonprofit organization and are able to accept tax-deductible contributions. And seeing as this is coming to the end of the year, as well as our block speaker series, if you're so inclined to make a donation to the organization during the course of the last few months of this year, there are envelopes on the counter as you pass, going out the door. They will give you a brief history of some of the projects and programs our organization has put together. And some myself, since the slave ship exhibit, the Henry Agree was here back in 2000, and leading up to this current block speaker series. If you'd like to grab an envelope as you leave, make a contribution to the organization, as I said, we are a nonprofit tax deductible 501c3 organization, and we can accept your donations at any point in time. Again, I want to thank you all for coming tonight and being a part of history, because as we make these videotapes, and you attend and exchange greetings and your historic recollections, I'm excited about the possibilities. And I'm learning something each and every month from each and every one of you, and I certainly do appreciate it. And thank you for being a part of the Block Speaker Series. I want to thank the staff, the Archives of History, for allowing us to make these presentations possible, videotaping them, and putting them on YouTube. Each one of them can be viewed on YouTube within a couple weeks of the presentation. The last three, beginning with Ms. Lacey last month, Chuck James III in July, and Thomas Tyree in June, are currently on YouTube and can be seen in their entirety. If you go to the Archives of History website, go down to the bottom of the page on the right and click on the link of YouTube and look under African American Life in Charleston, a personal perspective. You can view that in its entirety and learn. Rather not learn, but go with what they have taught. Tell a young person who can learn from those videotapes what you already know. We can teach the others. You're teaching me, and I certainly do appreciate what you've given to the Block Speaker Series and to the city of Charleston. Thank you very much.